Morning everyone. I've got a couple of things, just a quick message to explain and clarify a couple of things. I've been getting a few emails and messages on Facebook and things like that where people seem to be confused as to a few things that I've said over the last few months. With regard to training other styles like the Muay Thai, the MMA, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, things like that. Some people are thinking I don't know why they're thinking this, but they're thinking that I'm going to be teaching those styles and incorporating those styles into what we do. That's absolutely not the case. I have no plans now or in the future to be teaching any of these other competitive styles in what we do. I went along to these classes for my own personal interest. Because I'd never studied any other martial arts before in my life. And also I didn't have anyone to train with. My wife was pregnant and couldn't punch me anymore, so I just wasn't feeling like I was getting any play with other people. So I went and tried some other things. But that does not mean that I'm feeling like I need to or want to incorporate those styles into what we do. So yeah, what I'm currently teaching, what I plan to teach in the future, anything you've heard, I'm still teaching the Earl Montague system of Taiji and Bagua. I have no plans to incorporate these other styles, the competitive styles. How could I? I did them for 2 months. I practiced these styles for 2 months. How could I possibly have the training required to be able to teach these styles? So, I know nothing about those styles. I just had a bit of a taste, and that's it. The second thing is Elis Montague's changing everything. What do we think about Elis Changes in the WTBA? I'm not changing anything. I think these comments, again, are coming from a misunderstanding, either the stuff I've just been talking about with regard to playing with other styles, but also with regard to pushing the martial a little bit more. Lately, I've been really pushing the martial, and especially even using protective gear so that we can push that martial further to a more rough level, but without hurting each other. I can only assume that this comes from people who have never actually understood or been aware that my father always used to use protective gear in order to pressure test what we do. You can't pressure test what you do without using protective gear, unless you want to get seriously injured, of course, every time you train. So because Dad didn't do a lot of that sort of stuff in the latter years, he still did it, but just not a lot because he was focusing on other things. But because that's what was there, people saw it at the camps and the workshops and things like that. So a lot of the people who are more new to the WTBA, I start talking about using helmets and gloves and elbow pads and neck protectors and whatever things that I might be using. And they're like, oh, this is new, this is different, this is not traditional Earl Montague stuff. But yeah, in fact, what I'm doing, this is what I said before, and it's what I've always said whenever I put videos out on this, but it's not been, I don't know why, but for some reason it's not been clear. I am bringing forward what is already there. I'm not making up new stuff. I'm not changing what we're practicing. I'm simply bringing forward a certain section of what we already practice. That sort of side has been a bit pushed back over the last 20 odd years. Sorry. The forms, the push hands, a lot of the other stuff seems to have become a lot more popular, and the real proper fighting stuff seems to have gotten pushed back because it's just what people want. Most people don't want to fight. They might want to do a few little training methods, things like that, but they don't want to actually get hit. They don't want to get rough. So that's been a bit pushed to the rear. It's gone into the background. I want to bring it back into the foreground because without it, we don't have a fighting system. Currently, if you really think about it, the WTBA is supposed to be, if you ask anyone, what's the WTBA? Oh, that's the martial side. They're the people who practice the martial areas of the internal arts, whereas most other people only practice forms and stuff. But come on, if we're really honest about it, how many people in the WTBA actually practice the martial stuff? And I'm not talking about just doing drills. That doesn't teach you, it doesn't not teach you how to fight, but if you only do drills, you don't know how to fight. You have to do freestyle movement. You have to do reactive training. You can't just sit there and do the Wudang hand weapons and the small San Sao in its set pattern and expect and think that you'll be able to fight. So there's lots of people in the WTBA who they can hit hard, they've got good structure, they look like they can rough and tumble, but they can't really rough and tumble when it's in a freestyle manner, when they don't know what's going to happen. So that's the part of the WTBA that I want to promote more, is that freestyle movement, the proper fighting, so that people in the WTBA will actually be able to fight properly. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that you have to do that. This is one area. That's what I love about the WTBA. We have so many different areas within our system that you can focus on. Some people only want to do forms and qigongs. Some people want to do the martial training methods, but not actually fight. And then there's a small percentage of people who actually want to learn properly how to fight. But those people, of late, haven't been given much. They've only been given the training methods, not the proper fighting. So as I said, it's always been there. It's just not been in the foreground. So I'm just bringing that forward, and that's all I'm changing in the WTBA, is just bringing up some of the stuff that hasn't been trained a lot. And that's another thing that I've been getting questions about, is people thinking that this new bringing forward the martial part, that they have to do it, or that I will be teaching it at all workshops. I'll be teaching it not all actually, but most of my workshops, as in the ones I organize. But if you're a WTBA instructor and you run a class and you want me to come and do a workshop at your class, as I usually do, then I'll teach whatever your group wants. I much prefer teaching what a group wants, what they're focusing on, because then I feel like I'm actually teaching something. So if your group does just Qigong and Yang Qing Fu's form, all slow stuff, I'm more than happy to just teach that stuff. If they want to do small sansa, push hands, I'll teach whatever you want me to teach. So they're the things I just wanted to clarify. And now I'd just like to go on a little bit more to kind of explain what our style, what the WTBA is about with regard to change and outside techniques and things like that. Picking up a new technique here and there from other styles does not mean that you're incorporating that style into your system. It's just a technique. That taking one technique from karate doesn't mean that, oh, now I have a hybrid system of Tai Chi and karate. It's just one technique. You're not learning their fundamental core principles. You're just taking a basic little idea and saying, oh, I like that, and then applying your principles to it, but using that movement. Every good martial artist, whether they be traditional martial artists or modern style competitive martial artists, if they see something really awesome, really good that works, they keep it. That's how you become better. You'd have to be stupid to not want to practice a technique just because it's a different style. Oh, that's not Tai Chi, so I'm not allowed to practice that. That's just ridiculous, isn't it? If it's a great technique, as long as it doesn't conflict with what you do. So my rule is, if it works, it works. It's a good technique if it works, as long as it doesn't greatly conflict with what you already practice. So something might work, your technique might work, and their technique might work. They both work. Let's say hypothetically they both work perfectly well, equally well. But the concept of how to get your body to do that thing completely conflicts with what your body already likes to do, even though it works. So maybe by trying to train those two things, you sort of get stuck in the middle, and they don't benefit each other. So that's the only thing you've got to watch out for. But if you do a technique and you feel like, okay, technically speaking, I've not done this specific movement before, but when I do it, it feels like Tai Chi or Bagua. So when that guy does it, it looks like, BJJ or Muay Thai or whatever. Whereas I'm not learning their style. So when a Muay Thai guy shows me a kick, I'm not all of a sudden practicing a Muay Thai kick. I'm practicing a Tai Chi kick, because I'm still using the body mechanics of Tai Chi. It's only the specific technique bit which might have come from the Muay Thai, you see. But what is important is the fundamental principles underlining what you're doing, not the external hand movement on the top or leg movement. A lot of people have this idea that what we practice is really traditional. And, you know, elements of it, of the WTBA syllabus, are very traditional. But my father used to say it all the time. Maybe he didn't say it much in the modern times, possibly. So maybe, again, some of the new people haven't heard him say it. But I know he's said it on the videos and in articles, in, you know, in the books and so on. He would always say, my martial art is an eclectic one. He would never say that he only does one martial art. He always said that specific, that's a quote, my martial art is an eclectic one. That is what Montague said. He would say that Taiji and Bagua are his primary two martial arts. They are his foundations. But then added to that, he's got his wrestling training. He did a bit of Xingyi. He went to the Philippines and trained in the stick fighting and the knife fighting with the Arnis guys. And some of it he thought, oh, I don't really like that. But other parts he thought, oh, that's very nice. So he kept that. He kept certain ideas and concepts. So what we practice in the WTBA, a form might be, like one form within what we do might be a traditional form, for example. But the WTBA as a whole, as a concept, is not a traditional style. The Earl Montague system is what we practice. We don't practice just Taiji or Bagua or Wudang or Xingyi. We practice the Earl Montague system. The Earl Montague system is an eclectic martial art. Sure, it's primarily Taiji and Bagua, but you know that this is why our stuff is quite different than most other Taiji and Bagua schools out there, because they are more traditional. Bagua school, we only do Bagua. Taiji, we only do the Taiji stuff. Whereas my father always incorporated bits and pieces from other styles that he thought were useful and effective, which is how any martial art should be. If you want it to work and be functional, don't ditch techniques just because they're not part of your system. So I'm no different. If I see a fantastic technique, I see it done and then I try it myself and I'm like, wow, that's so easy to pull off. That's fantastic to teach to beginners because it's so easy to learn, it's effective, it works for a smaller person even. Oh, but it's a karate technique. Oh, I can't use that. No, because it's a karate technique. Why not? As I say, as long as it doesn't conflict with what you already do. If you can take the shell of that and apply it to your way of moving, how we move in Taiji and Bagua, then it's a good technique and we should keep it on board if it's really, really good. Especially when it fills a gap in what you already practice. See, this concept that you or your martial art are perfect and need no outside help, need no change. It is the pinnacle of perfection. That's ridiculous. That's pretty egotistical and arrogant as well to think that. The idea that your martial art has the best possible technique for every possible situation and it's better than every other martial art in existence. That's a bit silly, isn't it, right? Of course there's going to be other things from other styles that may benefit your style. If you think that the style you do is without flaw, without error, it's perfect and it can't be bettered, you've got the mindset of a cult. It means you're closed-minded. You're not even, mine's perfect. Therefore, I have no reason to even look outside because mine's better. So therefore, you won't look outside. Therefore, you're narrow-minded. And being narrow-minded like that, you're putting up a huge blockade to your own progress. You'll never become the best you can be by having that thought process. Of course, that doesn't mean you have to go out there and search every possible martial art in existence. Okay, technically speaking, if you had all the time in the world on your hands, and you could, I mean, that's kind of what my dad did. He traveled the world. He went all through China and stuff, looking for different things. And that's why we have an eclectic martial art. So he sort of did that, but, you know, within reason. He didn't do it for 30 or 40 years, traveling and exploring and getting new information. So technically speaking, if you did that, yes, eventually you might get somewhere. But on the other hand, you've spent all your time searching, looking, so you haven't spent that much time training, have you? So you got to find a happy medium. What I do is I have what I have. I have what we have, what my father already put together, right? I don't actively search for more new stuff personally because I feel like what we've got is great. I feel like I'm going to be much better off and do myself more justice if I just train more and train harder than going out searching for new stuff. Because out of the hours, years, decades that I might spend searching for stuff, I might find a couple of little nice things. So overall, that time I could have spent training. So, you've got to find a happy medium between those things. So the only times I bring in something new is if I just happen to see something. If I happen to see a great technique, it's not because I was out there thinking, oh, there's a hole in our system, we have to find this, I've got to go and search. No, I just happen to see something and go, oh, that's really nice. Give me a go at that. And if I think it works fantastically and follows the basic principles of what we do, then I'll incorporate that into our system. I'll just give you one example of one that happened recently when I was training with the BJJ guys. It was defense against a rear naked choke, a standing rear naked choke, a sleeper hold, someone applying a proper sleeper hold around your neck, okay, from the back. So someone walking up behind you, essentially, almost impossible to get that move on from a fighting situation, but assuming someone's walked up behind you, got you around the neck. Now, Dad's primary go-to technique, he had a few different techniques, but his primary go-to thing was always hit, strike. Right? Hit with the elbows, strike him in the ribs, make him let go. There's nothing wrong with that if you can hit really, really hard from a very close range, maintain your balance, because if you're being pulled back off balance like this, you're not going to get much power in your strikes. So you've got to maintain your balance, be able to hit from very close distance, and effectively, well, maybe not knock him out, but hurt him enough to make him let go within about 3 seconds before you pass out. So if you can do those things, then great, hit him. But if you can't, which most people can't, you don't have close range power till you've been training for 10 years or so. Like, close range power takes a long time to get. Hitting or maintaining your balance when someone's dragging you backwards, that's really difficult. It's not to say that technique that Dad used to use is in any way wrong or bad. It's a very brilliant technique. If you have the tools required to pull it off, the experience, the advanced principles in your body, that's a very advanced technique. To be able to hit close range is advanced. The technique that they gave, though, in some ways, I'm not going to go too much into the technique, I just want to give you a basic idea, but in some ways, you could look at the pros and cons. So it's like, if you can do the Earl Montague method, maybe that's the better technique, because it gets you out of it and leaves you in a better position to follow up. That could be something about that. But then the BJJ technique, even if it's not as effective, if both were pulled off to perfection, I'd say the striking one is the better one. But you can't pull this off. This one you can. I've tried it. I mean, literally the first time I tried it without any practice, I did it very well. And I said, no, hang on. You mustn't have been holding tight enough. Really hold my neck, squeeze, like properly hold my neck and do not let me go. And then I tried it out. I tried it out then on one of my own students who's bigger and stronger than me, rather than in class. Because sometimes people in classes, they can let you do the technique to make you get a feel like as if, oh, I want him to think the technique's good. So they'll actually let you out of it a little bit. At least in the beginning, until you learn it. So you think, oh yeah, that's a good technique, and then you come back to class. And there's nothing wrong with that, really, as long as you're not totally lying and saying that a technique works when it doesn't. But anyway, just to double check that, I got one of my own students and said, all right, hold it, do not let me go. And I didn't tell him what I was going to do. I said, do not let me go, no matter what I did. And whoop, did the technique, got out of it, no problem. And he was like, how the hell did you do that? He was caught off guard. And it was a brilliant technique, and it was so easy to do. So it works, it fills a gap. The gap is not that we didn't have a technique for it. The gap was that the technique only worked at an advanced level. And I mean, okay, if someone grabs you from the back like that, you know, you haven't got a great chance, but with the right tools, you might have a better chance. So this technique that I took from them, I now teach. I was teaching at the last camp that I was doing, and the gap that it fills in our system is, it's what you should do until you can do this. It's the better technique for the beginner. Yeah, a lot of that. I'm going to do a whole separate video, in fact, on the difference between basic and advanced techniques. This is a very important subject. I've been talking a lot lately in classes and workshops and so on. And it's just the concept that a lot of people think that certain things are easy when in fact they're not. Like someone throws a jab towards your face, you block it and punch him in the ribs. Boom. You know, as in with one motion rather than going block and then strike, like just go boom. Seems very easy when you're doing it slowly in practice and stuff. But then the guy throws the jab and pulls his hand straight back and you punch him in the elbow. The speed and timing required to actually pull that off in a real situation is really, really difficult. You've got to be very, very extremely advanced to be able to pull that off. So that's the kind of thing I'll be talking about in another video at another stage. So, of course, why would I not bring that technique into what we do? If it works, it fills a gap, it's brilliant. The only reason that you would not bring that in is because of tradition. But then what is tradition? What is the tradition of Taiji? Most people think that tradition means don't change anything, keep it the same. It's the old, it's the original style. Don't change anything from what it was. That's not the tradition of Taiji. It's not the philosophy of Taiji. The tradition and philosophy of Taiji is change, is adaptation to the modern age, adapting things to the new information you get. You meet another martial artist, he's got a new technique. That means I need a new technique. If he's got some new attacking technique that I've never seen before, maybe I need to adapt something to defend against that certain technique. Taiji has been changed from day one. Ever since it started formulating, it never stopped changing. It's only since the modern era that people got this idea of tradition, Chinese tradition, when some Western people got a hold, oh, we've got to keep it exactly as the Chinese intended. But along those lines, the Chinese were changing it constantly all the way along there. It wasn't like, you know, people think, oh, the old Yang style is how Yang Luchan did his form. It probably looks nothing like what Yang Luchan used to practice. It was 200 years prior. So for me, the tradition, the philosophy of Taiji is change. We have to change and keep developing and adapting and making it the best possible system that it can be. Taiji Chuan means supreme ultimate fighting. If you don't change it and adapt to the modern world, it's not going to be anymore the supreme ultimate fighting, is it? That's how Dad always used to do it. He pretty much changed and adapted and added to just about every form and training method that he ever learnt. So a lot of people think that what they love about the WTBA, if you love the WTBA, you love the content, the stuff that we practice, the way we practice, our philosophies and things like that. If you love it, then you don't love it because it's the original Taiji and Bagua. That's not why you love it. You love it because of the Earl Montague factor. The Earl Montague adaptations that have been made. It was his input into what he learnt. Why do you think our stuff is so different than all the other stuff out there? It's not to say that he changed all the forms, like the forms are still the same sequence, they're the same fundamental principles, but he added his own flavor to what we practice, or to what he learnt rather, and now that is what we practice. So the concept of change is why you love the WTBA content. So to think that change is bad, but change is what created what you have, that's not very logical, is it? So my goal is to maintain the Taiji Chuan in what we do. Now, I kind of think it's the name itself is a little bit egotistical, at least that translation, the supreme ultimate fighting. Another translation is just that it's supreme poles, like yin and yang, supreme opposites. That I actually prefer that translation. But if we are to believe the supreme ultimate pinnacle of fighting translation, which I don't particularly like anyway, I will never say that what I do myself or what I teach or anything is above and beyond or better than anyone else's. It's just different. What I teach is different. What my father thought, it was different. It's not better, it's just different. So if you like it, well then it suits you. That's why you should practice it, because you like it, not because it's the best, because there's no such thing as the best. The best is what works for you. I mean, within reason, there are obviously a lot of styles out there which are rubbish. I'm not going to name them, but that just goes without saying with anything. You know, these people who touch people on the shoulders and they fall down, you know, you're not going to learn anything by going to those people. So to maintain the Taiji Chuan, the supreme ultimate, to maintain the concept of being the best you can be, making the system the best it can be. I like that way of saying it. The system I teach, I want it to be the best it can be. I don't want it to be the best, because that's arrogant to try to think mine will be the best. I just want it to be the best it has the potential to be. I want it to keep getting better. So to maintain that Taiji Chuan principle means changing and adapting, even if that means grabbing little ideas from other people. Because one person can't come up with all the changes, one person can't come up with all the new ideas. You've got to take ideas from other people who have trained in certain things, especially when it comes to, for example, grappling. Yeah, we do grappling in Taiji, but we more so do striking. So it would be a good idea maybe to take some ideas from people who focus 100% of their time on grappling, right? But then, of course, you've got to always remember that most grappling styles are designed for the tournament, in which case most of what they do may not be applicable in a street situation. So you've got to weigh up that as well. But certainly certain things that they have will be very, very beneficial to what we practice. Keeping the tradition for the sake of tradition, never change anything, keeping it locked in a box exactly as it was always, never questioning it. That is what will kill the tradition of Taiji Chuan.